I am continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I move along. So now we continue with Esther. We're going to be in chapter 7. We had that very fun chapter, chapter 6, where Haman ends up parading Mordecai through the streets. It's just kind of fun. Haman is consumed with a bitter hatred of the Jews, and Esther has invited the king and Haman to a second banquet, at which time she promises to reveal to the king what her petition is. So, chapter 7. Esther reveals Haman's plot to destroy the Jews. He is hanged on his own gallows. So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. The king's got to be a little confused at this. Her petition is, spare my life and spare the life of my people. Who's trying to kill him? The king doesn't know she's a Jew. He's got to be confused. Verse 5. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he, and where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine. And Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, Will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the king's chamberlains, said before the king, Behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, Hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. The king, Esther points in, Esther says, Save my life. Who's trying to kill you? And Esther points to Haman. Haman is. And this is where she obviously reveals that she is a Jew. He knows that Haman has his decree to kill the Jews. And just by association, just by understanding that, he would know that Esther is saying she's a Jew, whether she says it directly or not. And he is troubled. It's like, did I really allow Haman to kill my queen? And in his mind, he is angry at Haman, but remember, I think he remembers acting rashly with Vashti and deposing Vashti as queen, and he regretted that to some extent. And so he leaves. He goes into the garden to, in a sense, clear his head and consider this. Okay, let's mull this over a moment. And while he's gone, Haman leaps to the queen, begging for his life. And when the king comes back in, he sees Haman basically holding on to Esther's skirt, leaning against her on the bed there. He thinks she's trying to force himself on the queen, and he immediately orders his arrest. And then one of the chamberlains says, Hey, look, he's building this gallows. He built this gallows over here to kill Mordecai, who you wanted to honor. Mordecai, who saved your life 5 years ago. And so, in a mark of poetic justice, the king has Haman hanged on his own gallows. Now, I will say there's no indication that the king ordered the death of Haman's family, which I think is a point of consideration. That the king, it's very common that kings would kill not only the traitor, but also the traitor's family. Remember when Daniel was thrown into the lion's den and he was saved, then the king not only had the counselors who plotted against Daniel thrown into the lion's den, but he had their wives and children thrown into the lion's den with them. But at this point, the king is only hanging Haman. He is not holding his family or his household as guilty. And I think he does it quickly. He understands what's going on, and he wants to just get rid of it. He acted somewhat rashly with Vashti, and he was trying not to act rashly here. That's why he went to the garden. When he comes back in and he sees Haman leaning against Esther, and he thinks that Haman is attacking Esther, his anger is too much for him. He arrests him, and he's okay, we're going to hang him on his own gallows. But his anger is only towards Haman, so he doesn't do anything against the rest of the family, which I think is a good thing. So we'll leave that here. We've got 3 more chapters in Esther, so we will see you there.